to have you all here today. It's a pleasure to have you all in the audience today. I'm really impressed with the turnout. So great job to the team and staff for really getting you all out, and great job for you all making the effort to come out here today for this town hall meeting. My name is Tiffany L. Levette, and I'm the former NAACP president of the chapter here in Erie, Pennsylvania, also the CEO of Her Power Incorporated. I'm also known nationally as a daycare maven, and what I do is I help providers grow and start their child care business, as well as help organizations apply for grant funding. So that's just a little bit about me, and so we're going to go over a few things today for our program. Are we ready and excited? Honk your horn for me and let me know. Thank you. Good job. Thank you. Thank you. So definitely welcoming you to this event today. And today, I'll serve as your moderator for this cornerstone event, a drive-in town hall meeting. I mean, if COVID has done nothing else, it's taught us how to do things a bit differently. And personally, I have been impacted as well as my family, and we've managed to get through. I'm really excited that in Erie County yesterday, we had one case from what I'm hearing, one case from what I saw. So we're all doing a great job, and we're really getting through this pandemic together. Before I welcome the senators to the stage, I just want to lay out a couple ground rules for today. This will be on media. Entering into this event, you have all agreed to do that, so just be aware that this will be on all platforms of media. So you have granted permission for that already. The other thing that we ask is that our participants remain in the vehicle. Those who have permission not, you have already been directed on what to do and how to do that. But we ask for social distancing purposes still that you remain in your vehicle for the town hall meeting. We ask that also staff and attendees are encouraged to maintain that 6 feet distance still, and the senator and I are doing the same. We are practicing and also following the state's recommendations now. Also, the senator begins today's event with some opening remarks on his outlook on political climate and what's going on in Washington. He'll also talk to us about some key points about areas that he's been focusing on concerning our Commonwealth. Following that, we'll begin asking questions of the audience. We have questions that have already been previously submitted, and we have additional questions that have been submitted in the past that we'll get through after the 14 or 15 individuals who may be here today to ask their questions of the senator. I know Senator Casey will grant you the respect, and so please do the same in return. Respect the time of one another and allow us to get through the 60 minutes that we have here together. And so finally, as you can see in front of the stage, we already talked about there will be images, there might be individuals taking pictures, so please be aware that you might see yourself on social media. With that said, I now welcome Senior Senator, United States Senator Bob Casey.
All right. Thanks very much. I want to thank you all for being here. It's a nice thing of you to do for me and our office, but also for the Commonwealth, that you're here to talk about critical issues facing Erie County, the city of Erie, and all of northwestern Pennsylvania on a summer night. And unlike last night when we were in Fayette County where it was really, really hot, tonight we have a cooler temperature and maybe just a little rain. But let's first hear it for Tiffany. Tiffany, thanks for doing this. We're grateful.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's pretty good on the horns, huh? Tiffany, I want to thank you for the work you do for children and for the advocacy that you undertake on their behalf. And I want to thank you for being our moderator tonight. It's good of her to do that. And I think you have someone here I should introduce. Where is he?
Definitely. That'd be Dallas right over there.
Where's Dallas? Where'd he go? Dallas is all the way over there under the tent. Dallas, good to see you. Well, let me just make a couple of points about a number of things that are happening, but I'll just make three. One is that, as many of you know, if you wanted to summarize where we've been the last couple of months in Washington, the work that we've done for the American people and for the people of our state. Closer? Okay. I got to get closer. Is that better? All right. All right. But here's what I could do in very short order. I could very simply say that a lot of this work is about three words. The first word is rescue. The second word is jobs. And the third word is families. Now, the good news is one of those three is done, the rescue plan. Unfortunately, only one party voted for the rescue plan. But I think it's important that we review what the rescue plan is all about. The rescue plan was designed to make sure that in the middle of a public health crisis, that the United States Senate and House and the administration was going to respond. That we weren't going to just give up on communities. Now, there are a lot of people in Washington who said they didn't want to send any funding to the city of Erie. They said they didn't want to send any more federal money to Erie County. They didn't want to send any more federal money to northwestern Pennsylvania, or for that matter, anywhere in the Commonwealth. But I said yes to that, and thankfully we had enough votes to pass the rescue plan. You might say, well, what does that mean to me? Well, it means a couple things. Number one, when it comes to Erie County, when you add up the dollars that went to the county directly, and then those dollars that went to the city of Erie and other municipalities and townships and boroughs throughout the county, here's what it meant. 150, just a little bit less, $150 million. That's what it meant. Now, I know those folks in Washington still think they were right about not sending those dollars to the people of Erie and Erie County in northwestern Pennsylvania. But they were wrong, and I was right. And I'm going to keep voting for dollars like that to lift up communities that have had a terrible time in this pandemic. But that's not all we did in the rescue plan. Some people in this audience and a lot of people you know got a $1,400 check. That came from the rescue plan. And those same people in Washington who were saying don't send any money to Erie County were also saying don't send anybody a $1,400 check. But we fought against them and we beat them because $1,400 checks went out the door, in addition to a $600 way back in December. Those same people also said that families all across America needed no help in this pandemic if they had children. They didn't want to help them beyond what the existing child tax credit gave them. We said the existing child tax credit wasn't good enough for the families that we represent. So I decided to vote for an enhancement of the child tax credit to help families raising children, especially in a pandemic. Because families need help when there's a pandemic. Families need help with all of the challenges of raising children. But there are a lot of people in Washington who said no to that. And when they said no to that, they were saying no to 90% of families in Pennsylvania that have children. 90%. They said no to all of that. They also said no to vaccination money, because that was in the rescue plan. They also said no to money for schools, because that was in the rescue plan. And a lot of other things. You get the picture. I won't go any longer. So the rescue plan is one part of at least three things we got to do. The second part is the jobs plan. That's about infrastructure, repairing roads and bridges. Like here in Erie County, you've got at least 50 bridges that should be focused on for repair, and I'm sure a lot more than that, but it's about 50. You should also have monies or funding for your communities, because that's what you deserve. Your federal government should help the city of Erie, Erie County, and northwestern Pennsylvania pay for infrastructure. But some in Washington may not want to do that, but I do. I also want to make sure that if you're a senior in Erie County or northwestern Pennsylvania, or a person with a disability, and you want to have care in the home, in your home or in the community, that you're going to help do that. You're going to get help doing that. But there are a lot of people in Washington that don't agree with me on that. But you know what? They're going to lose the battle. I'm going to win that battle. We're going to win that battle. We're going to get funding for home and community-based services. Just like we're going to get funding in the jobs plan and the families plan, the second and third part of what we're talking about, for investments in quality, affordable child care. A lot of people in Washington don't want to do that. They also don't want to make sure that more 3 and 4-year-olds get quality early learning pre-K. But we're going to do that as well. And we're going to make sure, I know the folks in Erie are getting excited about the potential in this region to have a new community college. I believe, and a lot of people believe, that we should have community college available to everyone that wants it beyond high school. Not just those who can afford it, but everybody. But I got news for you. I'm going to need all of your help to do this, and so will a lot of other people, because there are powerful forces in Washington that are trying to stop us from making these investments. So it's just a good old-fashioned fight, right? We got to battle against them, win the legislative battle, so that we can help a lot of communities. Second thing, I also want to make sure that we're focused on children. I mentioned a couple things on the child tax credit and child care and things like that. But you know what? We got to do more than that. I've just introduced a new plan, a 5-part plan, 5 freedoms for America's children. The freedom to be healthy, the freedom to learn, the freedom to have economic security, the freedom from hunger. Millions more children are hungry because of the pandemic. Millions. It went from about 10 million, almost 11 million, up to 17 million nationwide. And the freedom, the 5th freedom, is the freedom to be safe from harm. We got to make sure we protect children from those who would do them harm. So there's a lot going on, but I want to make sure that we get to our questions. So let's get to our first questioner, and I think they have to approach the microphone to do that, and I know it's a little bit of a walk. But because of that little rain, it's good we have that tent over there.
Senator, thank you for coming once again to Erie. Some people are saying you're here so often they're going to start calling us Scranton West.
That sounds pretty good.
My question has to do with vaccination rates. And my personal view is that the administration has done an outstanding job. So what can we do as citizens, as American citizens, to try to close the gap between where we are now and a much higher vaccination rate?
It's a great question, because I think what we were talking earlier today about veterans, and thanks for the work that you've done. But on the vaccination question, first of all, we had to do the right thing on the funding. You can't say we need a vaccination program to try to get to that 70% mark of the number of Americans vaccinated, right? It doesn't look like we'll get there by the 4th of July, but we're going to be darn close, maybe 68. We'll see what it turns out to be. But you can't just say that as president, or I can't just say that as a senator or any leader. Mayor Schember's here. He couldn't just say this. We've got to be able to provide the resources to do that. And if we didn't pass the rescue plan, that vaccination number would be maybe half of what it was, if that. So first of all, you have to vote the right way and provide the resources. But I think we also all have an obligation to make sure that we're telling our friends, our neighbors, our relatives, anyone that we encounter who might have some questions, might have some doubts, might even have some fears about vaccinations. We've got to make sure that they know the facts, what the public health professionals tell us, what the FDA has told us by granting emergency use authorization. That's a high bar. You can't get that for a vaccine unless you can prove a lot and get over that high bar. There's no country in the world that has an FDA and a process like we do. It's just no country in Europe, no country in Asia or anywhere in the world has the process that we have. It's tough and it's rigorous, so that when a vaccine gets that emergency use authorization, it has to pass 2 big tests: safe and effective. You got to have both. It's got to be safe and it's got to be effective. So all these vaccines that people have had the benefit of have passed that test. Secondly, I want people to know that if they still have questions, we want to help. My office wants to help. I think any public official wants to provide that information. What we don't need, though, and what we're hearing a lot about out there, are politicians, some of them in Washington, some of them in Harrisburg, some of them in places around the country, who are not doing the right thing for their country. When you're making stuff up about vaccinations, when you're making stuff up about important issues, you should be called out and held accountable. The American way, that's good. We like hearing those horns for that. But the American way is making sure we put facts on the table, that we're guided by science, not guided by some blowhard politician who doesn't know what they're talking about. And sometimes, even when they do know the facts, refuse to put the facts on the table. So we got to call them out and make sure that they know that the American people expect us to put facts on the table so that more of them can be vaccinated. So we got a ways to go. 68% is not good enough, 70% is not good enough. We got to get it higher than that. But we're going to keep answering questions and keep putting those facts out there, and every one of us plays a role in that. But thanks for the question. Thanks for that help, Grace. Getting the microphone ready. Sir, how you doing? What's your name?
Ron Comey, 6th
Hey, Ron.
Ward Chairman of the Democratic Party here in Erie County.
Thank you for doing that work.
I don't know if you're going to like my question or not.
Go ahead.
And it's called term limits
Uh-huh.
for all, not just senators, Congress, everybody. And not so much term limits when I thought of this question, more so a retirement age.
Uh-huh.
Because, I mean, say for instance, you started at a young age, right? So you get to 70, you'll probably have 30-some years in as our senator. Wouldn't you think that it's time to, because right now you could have put your hat in for a president, but you have all these elders ahead of you that probably hold you back. And that was just it. I mean,
So your question is term limits, yes or no? Is that it?
yeah, basically, or just a retirement age.
Or
You know,
a
I
retirement
mean,
age, okay.
yeah, more so a retirement age because you're doing a great
Well-
job. So there's no reason,
Well,
even,
thanks.
yeah, even though I'm putting getting a petition for running next. No, I'm just. But
No, but
yeah,
Ron, it's a good question because a lot of people we've had debates about this over a long time.
Yeah.
I've always been in the camp that says the term limits on a public official are determined by the voters, right?
Right.
So they make a decision every 2 years for some officials, state representative or member of Congress, 4 years for state senator and some other offices, whether at the county level or otherwise. President's 4 years, governor, and U.S. senators get 6 years. We're lucky; it's a longer period of time. But I think that's the determination that voters have to make about how long they want you to serve. They can, it's kind of up or out. They can promote you again, or they can throw you out. Now the question of age is probably one that we haven't debated as much. But look, I work now in the Senate, as you can imagine, with a lot of people that are 70 and older. Not just because they've been there a while, but also because sometimes they were elected later in life. They
Right.
might be above the age of 70 and they're in their first term or second term, not their fourth or fifth term. And the contributions that they've made are remarkable. So I get a little worried about and would not support a number like an age number. Now I know that similar concept is in place in some judiciary, some levels of the judiciary. For example, at the federal level, when you hit a certain age, you go to senior status, so it's a little different. But those are lifetime appointments, and you're there. There's no voter involved there where they can vote against you in a re-election. So there are places where those limits have been put in place. But look, I think voters are not only well informed, but they think long and hard about how they vote. Yep. I think voters today, by the way, have more information about candidates than they did when I was growing up because of social media, because of the internet, because of the availability of information. You can transmit information about how someone votes or their position on an issue around the world. In the old days, you had to wait for the paper the next morning, or you had to wait for some newsletter or something like that. But they're important questions to debate, and I'm glad you raised them.
Thank you.
Ron, thanks so much. Best of luck.
Okay, okay.
So who's next?
While we're waiting for our next
Yes.
question to come to the stage, I just wanted to acknowledge that County Councilman Horton is here in the back. If you could wave at the people back there. County Councilman Horton.
County
He's in-
Councilman.
We just wanted to acknowledge that you're here today. Thank you. And also Mayor Schimber is here, you mentioned. So we appreciate you too for being here.
I know I can't see the mayor from here. Where is he? Where's the mayor?
Over there.
Is he-
Waving his hand over to the right, Senator.
Oh, mayor, okay, thank you. But the county councilman still has a tie on. I saw him earlier today, and he had a tie, and I took off my tie. Sorry, sir. Does he know Gary Horton?
I think they may know each other.
I think it's the same family. Gary Horton he's the much older brother. No? Just kidding. Okay, thank you so much for being here.
Senator, how are you? He is the older brother. You're right. The councilman's the younger looking one, of course. So, as we're talking about the economy and the concerns that we have here, Melly had a question for you.
Okay.
What do you think's our best option to help us, as we recover? What do you truly recommend?
So this is Melly,
Yes,
and your first name is?
I'm Julie.
Julie, thanks so much. Now, this is the first time I've ever been able to answer a question from
Yeah.
a dog. This is really groundbreaking. No, in terms of the recovery, I think what we've got to make sure that we do is to, first of all, we had to put in place the rescue plan. You heard me talking about it before, I won't repeat it, but that was essential. There are a lot of people who voted for most of the so-called COVID bills starting in March of 2020 with the CARES Act, and then some additions to that, and then a big bill in December. A lot of people said we're done, okay? That's their point of view. I didn't agree with them. I thought we needed one more significant bill because there are just a lot of hurting communities out there that got nothing between the time we voted in March and the end of the year. There's still a lot of people out of work, a lot of small businesses need help. By the way, the rescue plan also had about, forgetting the exact number, but between 26 billion or 28 billion for restaurants. They've been asking all year long, and Congress never responded until the rescue plan. So I think we have to be mindful that we voted on the rescue plan, it's law, and that's the last COVID bill, right?
Right.
But there are elements of the rescue plan that will help communities recover. For example, just because the unemployment insurance addition, the extra $300, just because that's going to end in September, doesn't mean that communities won't be hurting. So we got to be mindful that there's going to be some folks out there that are going to need some help. I think it's critically important that we extend the enhanced child tax credit to help families with their children, raising kids in a pandemic or right after, help families with child care. I was the one who drafted the legislation for the enlarged or enhanced version of the child independent care tax credit, which is really, for shorthand, the child care credit.
Right.
That's important. About almost 7 million families get that in the United States. The earned income tax credit is also very important as well. So those kind of supports for families, as well as supports for employers. Just because the so-called PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program, the dollar amount to small businesses nationwide was almost $800 billion. So that was a good program. A lot of small businesses were helped or rescued or stabilized, right? But that doesn't mean we shouldn't have the SBA, the Small Business Administration, keep an eye on helping small businesses because they'll have other challenges. But I think long term, in addition to the short term things we can do, long term, I think the way we build the economy of the future, as President Biden has said, build back better, the operative word there is better, is to make sure we're making investments in children and families, and especially children with early care and learning, and so many things I already talked about and won't repeat. So it's very, very important that we think about this as a short-term recovery as well as a longer-term recovery and get the economy kind of out of the ditch. Now, there's some good news. Last thing I'll say. Good news in Pennsylvania. About 3 months ago, I looked at all the counties in Pennsylvania, 67 counties, and just as a line of demarcation that I just arrived at myself, I said, how many counties in Pennsylvania have unemployment that's 7% or higher? That's pretty high in a state where a lot of counties are in the before the pandemic were lower. And I remember counting out of the 67, at one point it hit like 46 counties. That's a lot, or 45. And it stayed at that for maybe 2-3 months. The good news today is as of the May numbers, they're the most recent county numbers, the state number is lower than this, but as of May, the number of counties in Pennsylvania below or above 7%, where we don't want them to be, is only 11. So we've gone from about 45, 46 counties down to 11 that have 7% unemployment or higher. So that's a trend in the right direction. Unemployment's coming way down, county by county by county. But we got some work to do. Like, for example, in Erie County, as of May, there was still 9,100 people out of work. So Erie was in one of those places where it was above 7. So we're not there yet, but we're getting there. And I just think we have to be strategic about investing in families and communities and helping employers.
Very good. Thank you, Senator.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Wow. Now here is a pro.
Good to see you again.
Does everyone already
Jake
know?
Rao from the Erie Regional
good to see
Chamber.
Everyone know Jake? If you know Jake, beep your horn.
No. Yeah, one. First of
There's
all, yeah, thank you so much for
Do we have
being
a horn
here.
here? I met Jake when he was about, I think he was 7 years old and he was working on economic development, right?
Yeah, and had a full head of hair. Anyway, it's great to see you. Thanks so much. I do want to tell you firsthand the assistance provided to the businesses in the community through PPP and other mechanisms truly was significant. And, the positive news for us, for the most part, obviously businesses took it on the chin big time.
Yeah.
But they kept swinging, kept staying in the waters. The number of actual business closures in Erie County was far less than what we expected, and we're grateful to see the vaccine rolling out, giving those employers and their employees confidence to go back to work. But that unemployment issue is huge for the people who are unemployed, but for the employers in every sector, they're really challenged in getting people to come back into the workplace. So the vaccination piece is very big for that because people need to be safe.
Right.
And they're concerned about loved ones at home. Is there discussion? Because this, even if you're down in your neck of the woods, if you're at 5%, but before the pandemic, you're probably at 3.5%, right? So you're feeling that pinch as well. And what is the discussion at the federal level about how do we prompt people to get back to work? First, obviously, it's got to be safe.
Right.
That's the big one. The second is, and you were talking about it, childcare, massive issue, has to become cost effective. And, that was an industry that got decimated as well with the pandemic. So I'm just curious to hear what discussions to better prompt people to get more confident, go out, apply for jobs. If you look at Indeed, Monster, all their space is sold out.
Oh.
Everyone's looking in every sector. So I don't know what you're hearing at the federal level or what you guys are talking about to get more people out there confident to go apply for jobs and get back into the workforce.
Yeah, I think in so many ways you answered your own question. I mean, when you made a reference to some of those indicators, we got to promote confidence in terms of the number of people vaccinated and the safety of vaccination. So it's important that we have a lot of consistent messaging, which I think generally in the last 6 months or so has been very consistent. But we got to stay on that so that people don't hear mixed messages. For example, when we started these town halls outside only, maybe 2 months ago, I'm forgetting the time frame now, we had masks on. Most people, even at the microphone, had masks. So we've been able to relax that. So consistent messaging, making sure that if there are more ways in a community or a state to get the word out about vaccinations, we do that. Sometimes the most important validator, as you know, Jake, is not a politician like me, or frankly any politician. The best validator is a community leader, a respected figure in the community that people not only respect but rely upon for information or guidance. So we have to continue to push local respected validators in front of local audiences. But we still got pockets of places in our state and even more so around the country where people are hesitant. So we got to keep doing that. But certainly in terms of the broader picture, you mentioned the making sure people can feel confident that they're going into a safe workplace, making sure they can get a quality, affordable child care. And because it's going to change pretty soon, there's not going to be that unemployment bump in the fall. So people have to be dealing with these issues in ways they might not have before. But I think generally there's agreement. Now there's some big disagreements in Washington between Democrats and Republicans about the scope of infrastructure and things like that. But generally there's agreement that these are the elements, I think, to help people get back to work. But I'm happy that people are searching online for work, because that means they're ready to get back, kind of back in the saddle. Jake, the last thing I'll say is one of the best ways to create more of those openings or more jobs is to get these infrastructure initiatives done.
Yeah,
You know,
the
when you-
infrastructure piece. I
Yep.
just want to say, I mean, huge need in Pennsylvania, no question about it. Great jobs. So absolutely 100% support that. That's something long overdue nationwide, but Pennsylvania especially.
And that will help lift a lot of these economies.
Great. Thank you.
Jake, thank you.
Nice
Thanks
to
for your
see you.
good work.
Good to see you.
Good evening, Senator. Thank you
evening.
for coming to Erie.
Sure.
So my question has to do with what kind of legislation is going to be passed in this Congress. So it doesn't seem like the filibuster is going to be going anywhere anytime soon. So because of that and because of how closely divided the Senate is right now, which issues do you think have the best chance, or which issues do you believe should be made a priority in passing relatively soon?
And your first name is?
Trent.
Trent. Thanks very much, Trent. Trent, it's a good question, because obviously right in front of us, in terms of what we're working on now and what I think the nation wants us to push forward, is this broader infrastructure focus. And that's when I talked about the jobs plan and the families plan. I think about that as kind of one big piece, right? One big enterprise. The President proposed a jobs plan plus a families plan that adds up in total for the two plans to about $4 trillion. Will we get $4 trillion when all the legislating is done? Probably not, but I think we can get a robust investment, and that would include everything from physical infrastructure all the way through the caregiving investments we have to make, the investments in child care, and so many other priorities. So that's I think the big agenda item for the next couple of months. At the same time, in the Senate at least, you have to do some other things, right? We've got to continue to get confirmations done, whether it's a judge or a cabinet official, or at this point sub-cabinet officials. So you got to keep doing that. You can't just stop doing confirmations. So that's part of our work as well. But in terms of the focus of your question on what else can we do with this, what some call the filibuster rule, I'll call it the 60-vote rule, because it's a better explanation for what happens. We've had this rule in the Senate for a long time that substantive legislation, not all of it, but most of it, has to get 60 votes instead of 51 votes. That was in place for generations. I think sometimes in the past it led to consensus that we don't have now. We assuredly don't have on some big issues. But I think it also worked to the detriment of a lot of Americans, especially Americans without power. So now there's a debate about, should we drop that number 60 down to 51? Or should you drop it from 60 to 55? Or should you keep the numbers in place but only change it for one big issue? or there's lots of options here, or change the rules so that if someone invokes the filibuster, they got to earn it. You know what they do now when they invoke it and they say, I want 60 votes, this has to be a 60-vote hurdle? They go home for the weekend. They don't earn it. They don't stand there in the well of the Senate for days or weeks in using that tool. They go home for the weekend. That's not fair to people that want progress made on legislation. So in my judgment, and this is a different point of view that I have now than I had even just a few years ago, this rule is an impediment to progress, in my judgment. Now, will I be successful, and those of us who support a change in the rule, either to change the rule or to do away with it, will I be successful in convincing 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever the number is of people in our caucus that don't want to change it? I don't know. Don't know the answer to that. But here's what I do know. We are a long way, a very long way, from this issue being settled. I know there's people out there saying, oh, it's never going to happen. You're never going to make a change, and it's not going to happen because this senator or that senator is opposing it. We are just at the beginning of this debate. We have not really had, as a nation, and even in Washington, we haven't had the kind of full debate on this 60-vote rule that we're about to have, I think. Mostly because of voting rights. That brought the issue to the top of the agenda for a lot of Americans. And we're at the very early stages of the debate about voting rights. We have already made a lot of progress in taking some of the changes that were suggested by a number of members of the Senate on the Democratic side and made changes to the proposed bill. But there's still no bill yet. So we still have a bill to work on, and then we're going to have an intensive debate about and reach a conclusion about deciding whether or not to change the rule for voting rights only or to change the rule for other issues as well. And we've got urgent issues. And if you wanted to make a list, you could certainly make the list, and at the top of that list would be voting rights. There are other issues as well. I won't try to recite all of them, but there's no question that if we don't take action to make sure that every American has more opportunities to vote, has the opportunity to vote in the way that's best for them, in ways that will protect the right to vote. If we don't do that, if we don't work on that, there's not much else that matters in terms of what we vote on. So the voting rights debate and the debate about the 60-vote rule is just beginning. It's not in any way in the late stages. So we got a lot of work to do, and I appreciate the help that voices like yours give us in that debate. Final point I'll make. For those who say, oh my goodness, a change from 60 votes would be unprecedented. In 1975, not that long ago, I was alive, I was 15. In 1975, we went from 67 votes to 60 votes. There's plenty of precedent for changing this rule. So we're going to aim to do it so we can stop the obstruction and get a good voting rights bill passed into law.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Tiffany, I feel like in between here I should have some monologue or something. What do you think?
Hi, good evening, Senator. How are you? My name's Mark.
Hey, Mark.
And I didn't change my tie because it is a Penn State tie.
Wow, that's
So,
great.
you
Looks
know,
great.
We had to make sure we keep that on. This
Sky's still blue, I think, or almost
yes,
blue.
well, yeah. This question has to do with some of your work on the Special Committee for Aging, and you mentioned some home and community-based services. Specifically, I'm going to drill down into a program that you know as PACE, Program for All-Inclusive for the Elderly. I want to make the clarification. I think you also know it as Life, Living
here in
Independent.
Pennsylvania.
Right. We have to do it as Life Years, so it's not to be confused with the pharmaceutical program.
Right.
So we'll discuss it as Life if you can. I'd like to know, maybe be brought up to date on some of the work that you're doing in the Aging Committee for bringing more eligibility and more access for those that are frail and elderly that qualify for life. And as a follow-up to that, when you're through, to ask for your help on an access issue that we're having, kind of with the state telling us to go and check with the feds, and the feds telling us to check with the state.
Okay. Well, on that one, why don't we schedule some time so you can talk to our folks. We've got some here tonight who can begin the conversation, but we should do that because that will require, I think, a longer discussion.
Yes.
But we'd like to help you with that. But Mark, it's a great question because, as he said, the program that's known nationally as PACE just happens to be the same acronym, really the same word in a sense, that our pharmaceutical program here is in Pennsylvania, so we call it LIFE. Important distinction. But what we're trying to do, and I've got a bill to do this, what we're trying to do is to take what is a really good model here in Pennsylvania, the LIFE program, to help seniors and provide better services and supports for seniors and make that more of a national trend. We don't have enough states that have embraced it. So that's one thing we're trying to do. And to marry it to and to bring it together with the substantial investment that I and a lot of people in Pennsylvania want to make in home and community-based services. So it's really, in some ways, this whole range of issues is really a way to finally say, when it comes to long-term care, people should have options. People should have the option that's best for them. The only option shouldn't be a nursing home. Some people have that as the option they prefer to get skilled care in a nursing home, and that's fine, or in another long-term care setting. But if someone wants an option that allows them to have supports and services for people with disabilities and have care provided in the case of a senior at home or in their community, we've got to make sure that they have that opportunity. They don't now, because those services are capped at, depending on what the state does, with a waiver. So now you have 820,000 Americans on a waiting list for home and community-based services. That wasn't the case years ago, but it is the case now. And that 820,000 is going to grow substantially. In a couple of years, it could be millions of people waiting for these services that we claim to support as a nation, and we're not allowing people to get those services because we have not invested the dollars in Medicaid to allow that to happen. And I'll give you a little insight into this. Among those 820,000 Americans on waiting lists, you know where most of them are? The biggest number is not in Pennsylvania. We got about 16,000, but that's far too many. We want to get that number down to 0. I'll tell you who has a much bigger number. The state of Texas. They got more than 350,000 people of the 820 on that waiting list. In the state of Florida, in the state of Louisiana. So I hope their senators are going to listen to us when we say we want to help your state as well as Pennsylvania. We want to help all the states to meet the promise that we should keep to seniors and people with disabilities. And in America today, we are not keeping that promise. So if we're going to call ourselves the greatest country in the world, we got to have the best caregiving in the world. Not second place, not third place, not fifth, number one. And if we're going to be number one in caregiving, we got to make those investments. But Mark, you got more than you bargained for in that answer, but thanks for asking about it.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator. As we wait for the next question to come to the mic, just hearing the discussion about infrastructure and the investments and things that have been poured into small businesses, ABC has been impacted by that. We're daycare downtown in Erie, and if it had not been for the resources that a lot of you have advocated for by having councilmen call and say, hey, apply for this, we wouldn't have been able to survive. So thank you so much for your contribution to that.
Well, I had a little help. All that money wasn't just mine. We had a lot of help. No, but Tiffany, in terms of the, you have how many families that are served?
Well, we had 156.
Yeah.
Went down to 56 pandemic. Now we're back up to 83.
So when 156 to 56, now back to 83.
Yes.
Well, we got to, the point that Tiffany made, or is making it implicitly, and the point was made earlier, is it wasn't simply that families had trouble paying for child care and accessing it in the pandemic, but providers, right? Child care and so many other programs that are important, whether it's Head Start or others. So that's our little commercial in between. Yeah. Thanks.
Hi, Senator. Thanks for coming today. My name is Deb Bartle. And you already addressed the importance of voting rights, but the Supreme Court's decision in 2019 about gerrymandering
Right.
means that even when our voting rights are supposedly being upheld, the very districts in which we're voting have been designed to deny us the power of that vote. One of the analyses that I read about Pennsylvania, which posits that just for trying it out, there's a 50-50 vote. So all of the votes are just Republican or Democrat. Even if that were the case, the Republican Party currently would get 9.1 more % of the votes, even if it were an actual dead heat. So that to me says these districts are not designed to uphold the one person, one vote system. Regardless of which side benefits, that should not be the case. So, since we know that on the state level we are not having our rights upheld, what can you do for us on the federal level, since the Supreme Court has kicked that back to your branch of the government?
Deb, thanks so much for that question. And I've got to read that study. I haven't seen it. You gave me a really good summary of it. Can I just ask one question to you before you go? Do you know Art Martinucci Sr.?
I do. That's my father-in-law, and he's
No.
awesome.
I just had lunch with Art today. I haven't seen him in a long time. He is doing really well. He's a tough guy, and we work together in state government. That's why I'm just doing a little personal note. If you don't, folks don't mind me saying that, but Art's a wonderful guy, and his son isn't so bad either.
Yeah, I'm kind of partial to him myself.
But Deb, you raised an issue that gets right back to this question about not just voting rights, but a voting rights bill, because one of the areas that we want to address is gerrymandering in a voting rights bill. And as you might have heard that Senator Manchin and a few other senators wanted to make changes on some of these voting rights provisions. And we got agreement, at least among Democrats, on a new version of a voting rights bill. Now, it's not written yet. We got to get to the details. But one of the areas that I think we have consensus on is focusing on voting rights in a voting rights bill, but also dealing with gerrymandering to take away I'm going to be blunt about this, and I'll offend some people, but the same crowd in Washington that for the last 40 years was rigging the tax code for very powerful corporate interests. And when I say rigging it, I mean like to the tune of trillions of dollars to their benefit. So they rigged the tax code. The same crowd rigged has rigged the campaign finance system so that dark money can come into a community. You don't even know who's advertising, and they can come in and try to buy elections. The dark money corporate crowd is the same crowd that's been supporting efforts over years to have these gerrymandered districts. And it's a corporate right-wing attempt to rig congressional districts and legislative districts to benefit powerful interests. And we got to stop them. And the only way to stop them is getting a bill like this passed that will have a gerrymandering provision as well as the other provisions. So we're not there yet in terms of the bill, in terms of it being drafted and the details worked out. But we're gonna get something done on voting rights, including gerrymandering, because we got to do it. Deb, thanks so much.
And now we're at the time of the program where we only have time for one more question, Senator.
Only one?
Yes, so we'll,
Can we
Senator.
squeeze in two?
You want to squeeze in two?
Yeah, we can do one more.
Okay, one more question? Okay, so one more question after
Unless
this.
no one wants to come over. I don't want to put someone on the spot.
Hi, Senator. My name is Jane Schweitzer.
Hey, Jane.
And I really appreciate being able to ask this question. It's something that I have thought about for years now. So much so that it actually has motivated me to get in politics. I'm helping a candidate named Rick Tellis, who's exploring running in D16 right now. That's Mike Kelly's position. And the question is, what can you do? What can other government leaders do? What can any of us do to open up communication between the left and the right? You know, there's such a divide in this country right now, and we need to get back to a welcome, healthy debate on the issues, but we can't even have conversations anymore. So what do we do?
Jane, it's a great question, and I think I'm duty bound as an elected official, not only to have an answer, but to try to engage in these conversations that we frankly don't engage in enough.
Right.
I include myself in that. I'm pleading guilty to that. If you're an elected official, whether it's an elected official that represents a congressional district or a state legislative district or state senate or a whole state, you represent everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone calls our office for constituent service work, we don't say, well, what party are you? Or did you vote for our, our friend? Or who'd you vote for? We got to help everybody. So that's the job of an office like ours. We got to respond to their needs, their concerns as best we can, and try to answer their questions, and sometimes provide some direct help they can't get any other place. But in addition to that, I have an obligation, not just running our office with that attitude, but I have an obligation as well to try to engage with colleagues on legislation and policy, even where we disagree on a lot of other things. I wouldn't say I'm the best in the world at that, but I try very hard, and I think we've got to keep trying. One thing that Joe Biden taught us long before he was president, and even before he was vice president, his last speech, and look it up if you want, it's an interesting speech. I won't try to recite it here, but one point that he made in his last speech on the Senate floor is, I guess, January of 2009, was, and this is my interpretation of it, but don't be categorical, right? Meaning that you can disagree with someone about tax policy, and I have real disagreements with the Republican Party about their 2017 tax bill, which I thought was a giveaway to big corporations and really wealthy Americans, but they don't agree with me. I have a big disagreement with them on health care. They wanted to get rid of the ACA. They wanted to wipe out Medicaid expansion. I don't want to let them do that, right? So we have big disagreements. But there's a difference between disagreeing with someone on one issue or maybe 400 issues. We might disagree on everything. But there's a difference between that disagreement on policy and then going too far, as some do in our political culture, not just politicians, but everyone does this at some point, or a lot of people do it, is to go after them in with a personal attack or a categorical judgment. If you don't agree with me on this policy, then you are XYZ as a person. That's not fair, and that's out of bounds. And anyone who engages in that should be called out when they do that. So I think one thing we can do and this is well beyond politicians, this is all of us as American citizens, we should try not to be categorical about judging someone even when you disagree with them. And that's hard because there are some jerks in politics, as you know. I won't make the list here, but I have a list in my mind. But I think even with the goofballs and the jerks, they're technical terms, I know, we should try to avoid making judgments about their character, who they are, their family, things like that. But we should fight hard when it comes to disagreements on issues. So I think if we try that in a political culture, someone might disagree with me about a presidential election or something like that, but I can still have a conversation with them and try to listen. So I think it's listening more, don't be categorical, but that doesn't foreclose the possibility of having really vigorous debates. That's the American way.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Jane. So Grace, does anyone else want to ask a question?
Yes.
It's very nice of them to come up when we didn't prepare them, right? We didn't say you're going to have a question tonight, right?
Thank you very much for taking one last question. Sure. As you may know, in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, it was the site of the Carlisle Industrial Indian School.
Right.
And it was closed. And right now, this week, there's a delegation of Native Americans from the Rosebud Reservation who are retrieving the bodies of 9 children. And they've been very pleased with the help of Pennsylvania and the Army. So I was just wondering, because Carlisle at one time was considered the flagship of back then, which wasn't, nowadays we can say that wasn't a good thing. Back then, they were considered the flagship of what those schools were to be like. What can Pennsylvania do to kind of set the standard for how we're going to honor those children and those families? And, do you have any thoughts on that? Or, I think we should show other states how it should be done.
Let me ask you, your first name is?
Barbara.
Barbara, thanks. Barbara, do you have some ideas about this that you want to expound upon, or I've got some thoughts, but
Well, again, I think because Carlisle was such an important school, I think that, and again, we're looking at it in the 21st century, something that happened over 100 years ago, but I think that we have the opportunity to right some wrongs. I think we need to respect those children, respect the families who are coming, and the officials. We have the first Indigenous Secretary of the Interior.
yeah, Deb Holland, yeah.
That could be perhaps invited. And I think that there should be a way that Pennsylvania can, show respect when those families come to accept their children.
Well, it's a good start in terms of showing respect for those 9 children, nine families. But when I think about public policy at the federal level that relates to Native Americans, it is only, and I'm ashamed to say this because I've been in the federal government, as have a lot of people for many years. It's only recently, in the last couple of years, where we've made some real progress. Not only in President Biden appointing the first Secretary of the Interior, who's got Native American roots and has insights that the rest of us would not have. That was a good development. But on issues like healthcare in Native American communities, on issues like education and so many other things, that we're finally putting a spotlight on and making investments. The rescue plan provided dollars that have never been there before, but it took too long. And I think a lot of us haven't done nearly enough, and I'd include myself in that. We have to, even if you don't have a current, if you represent a state that doesn't have a deep history in Native American culture, Pennsylvania happens to be in that category that we do. We have a really deep history. And we've got a lot more to do, I think, from the federal level to make sure that we're making both investments and providing that example that you cited. So I think, and some of this obviously will involve state government and work done there, but I want to commend them for at least getting this step right and honoring those families. But we've got a lot more work to do on a whole range of issues that relate to Native Americans. And any ideas that you have that you'd want to transmit to us, I hope you stay in touch with us.
Okay, I definitely will.
Thanks for raising it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Well, Tiffany, thanks very much.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate everyone for coming and attending the town hall meeting. Thank you, Senator Casey, for all that great information. Very informative, and we're looking forward to going forward with you in our Commonwealth. As you exit, please exit at your own pace, and please be careful and cautious of your surroundings because there's cars in 3 rows, so just be careful. Thank you all, and you have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great 4th of July. Leave that there. Yep. Tiffany, great job.
I think I love the horns.
Thanks so much. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How can you get a picture from me so I can
Oh,
have
good,
one?
good.
Well, we met 1,000 times.
I know. Those mics are still on, I think. Let me
Yep.
take some water. Is that all right? You want to do a picture here?
We can do it down there too.
Okay.
Up here's good. Let me see where Kyle is. Oh, he's over there.